Hi, my name is Kristen Brown, and today I would like to give a short overview of the impact of management on the establishment of stereotypies in horses. The main topics I plan to cover are 1. The presence of stereotypies in the horse industry, so why they may be present in this specific industry as opposed to some of our other domestic species, because they really aren't seen a lot in the other ones. 2, some of the potential causal factors involved in the formation of stereotypies. And 3, some negative impacts stereotypies have on the overall welfare of the horse as a whole. So first, let's look at the makeup of the horse industry. This industry is unique to all other domestic animal species. In the U.S., horses are not raised to feed the world like cows, pigs, or chickens are. Horses are produced for a wide variety of purposes. They are everything from a companion to another employee on the farm. However, this diversity poses some unique challenges. Horses, produced for different purposes, all must be managed differently. They cannot all be managed in one way, such as cows, chickens, and pigs are, since they are all produced to feed the world. Horses serve many different purposes, and without a unifying management style, it can be very hard to monitor the welfare of these horses. And welfare has become a huge issue in the past 15 to 20 years with the public. Their view of welfare has become very important to how we do manage animals, and so that is something that has to be taken into account as we manage domestic animal species. So one way we can measure and analyze welfare is in the equine industry is through the presence of stereotypies. A stereotypy can be defined as a continual, mostly unchanging, and apparently functionless behavior that is directed at an inappropriate stimulus. Stereotypies are not seen in wild horse herds. They are behaviors that are only seen in horses that are managed by humans. So stereotypies are established in two main ways. 1, the behavior may begin spontaneously due to some stressor from the environment, and this would include behaviors that are not normally seen in the behavior repertoire of a horse in the wild in its natural setting. And 2, it may actually begin as a normal behavior that we do see in a horse's behavioral repertoire, but persists long enough to actually morph into more of an inappropriate behavior that can be destructive. An example of this is over-grooming. So grooming behavior is very normal to the horse. It's something we see a lot, but when it occurs constantly and it begins to occur for no apparent reason, it can actually turn into over-grooming and eventually become self-mutilation, and that is when it is a stereotypy, and it can be dangerous to the horse. So now I'm going to go into a little more detail on some of the types of behaviors which horses are highly motivated to perform. So they do it in the wild, and when they are not allowed to perform these behaviors, that is when we see an increased degree of the formation of stereotypies. So I'm going to touch on social behaviors, feeding behaviors, and then the time budget of the horse. So horses are naturally very social creatures. In the wild, they live in groups of around 8 to 10 mares that are watched over by one stallion, and these are called harems, and those groups stick together. So when a mare has a male foal and it grows into a young stallion, when it becomes too old, the dominant stallion will kick that horse out of the group, and but these horses are not, they do not stay in isolation. They actually find one another, all of these stallions, and they form their own groups. And so this is an example that horses seek out one another, that they never live in complete isolation. And so because of that, horses that are left in isolation due to our management practices are at a greater risk of having stereotypies. So then for feeding behaviors, a horse's digestive system has evolved to be full for most of the day. They are feeding almost constantly, so they are prey animals, and they cannot keep a lot of feed in their stomach. So if a predator does present itself, they need to be able to turn their tail and run away. And if they are have a big meal in them, it can be really hard to get away from that predator. So that is why they feed almost constantly. They graze. So however, in our management practices, it is more efficient for us to ask them to do more of a meal feeding. So we can feed 2 to 3 meals per day, and this leaves a large part of the day where they are not ingesting anything. And that's just not how their digestive systems were made. So during the times of when they're not eating, digestive upset can occur, and horses will try to stop this negative environment, and that can lead to the formation of stereotypies. And then time budget is also very important for a horse. Like I said, since they are prey species, they have evolved to be active for most of the day. They're not really ever standing around doing nothing. They're either moving to a new spot where they feel safe, or they are looking for a predator, or they're grazing. They're never really standing around and doing nothing. So, but again, our management practices ask our horses to be stalled. This is especially seen in performance animals. And so it has been shown that horses that are stalled for greater than 20 hours per day are at the highest risk of forming stereotypies. In the study by McGreevy and others in 1995, it was shown that even horses that were offered 4 hours of exercise per day still had no significant difference. They were still performing their stereotypies, even though they were offered 4 hours of exercise. Yeah, so that just shows that horses need that stimulation within their environment to keep from forming stereotypies. So some of the impacts on welfare. The welfare of a horse is very poor when stereotypies begin to dominate and take place of normal behaviors, and so we can use that as a measure of welfare in our management system. So if a horse is beginning to do a locomotive or oral stereotypy more than they're maybe feeding, or they're more than they are performing the work we are asking them to do, that's when we know that it is a marker of poor welfare. Stereotypies can also lead to health problems, such as gas colic and excessive tooth wear. And so when a horse is in poor health, that is also a marker of poor welfare. And then devices that attempt to limit the behavior should never be used, because it's not going to fix the problem. These are treating the symptoms, not the cause of the stereotypy. And that's not improving the welfare of the horse in the way that we are asked to do as managers. Yeah, so the equine industry is integral to agriculture in America, because horses serve a very unique function in our lives when compared to other domestic species. We must be conscious of how we manage them. Horses can form stereotypies for a wide variety of reasons, but it is our duty to the horses to further research their causes. This will allow us to improve our management practices in such a way that will optimize their health and well-being. Thank you.